The zipper of the tent ripped open like a scream in the dead of night, and there he was, David, shirtless and wild-eyed, rain-slicked hair plastered to his forehead, clutching a bottle of cheap whiskey like it was his last lifeline. "Samuel, I can't pretend anymore," he gasped, his voice cracking over the thunder rumbling across the desert sky, the festival's distant bass thumping like a frantic heartbeat. In that split second, as lightning forked the horizon and illuminated the chaos of mud-soaked tents and abandoned lawn chairs, I knew my carefully guarded world was about to shatter. It was the third night of Lollapalooza Midwest, that sprawling beast of a festival in Chicago's Grant Park, where the air always smelled like weed, fried dough, and unbridled possibility. I come alone, as I always did, 32, single by choice, a graphic designer from Brooklyn who treated these weekends like therapy sessions with better playlists. My tent was a cheap Amazon impulse buy, barely big enough for one, let alone the storm that had rolled in from Lake Michigan, turning the grounds into a slippery war zone. People were fleeing to their cars or huddling under tarps, but I was stubborn, wedged inside with my sleeping bag and a half-read paperback, pretending the downpour was just another plot twist. That's when David appeared, a ghost in the gale. He was pounding on the rainfly, his voice muffled but urgent. "Hey, anyone in there? Mind if I crash?" Mine flooded. Total wipeout. I hesitated, peering through the mesh at this stranger, tall, maybe 28, with that effortless Midwestern build, broad shoulders under a soaked flannel, jeans clinging like a second skin, and eyes the color of storm clouds, gray and piercing. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Bon Iver album cover, all rugged charm and quiet desperation. Against my better judgment, or maybe because the whiskey in my flask was whispering encouragements, I unzipped and let him in. "Thanks, man. You're a saint," he said, shaking water from his curls like a dog, droplets flying everywhere. Up close, he smelled like pine soap and regret, and his smile hit me like a rogue wave, crooked, genuine, the kind that makes you forget you're twice divorced from your own solitude. We introduced ourselves awkwardly over the roar of the rain. Samuel Hayes, the New Yorker with a sketchpad full of half-finished festival posters. David Ellis, a high school English teacher from Ann Arbor, escaping a shitty breakup he wouldn't elaborate on. The tent felt smaller with him in it, our knees brushing as we rummaged for dry clothes. He stripped off his wet shirt without fanfare, revealing a canvas of freckles across his chest and a tattoo of a compass rose on his ribs, pointing north. "Always north," he joked, but his eyes said otherwise. We passed the flask back and forth, the burn of bourbon loosening tongues and limbs. The festival's main stage was a muddy memory now, but we pieced together our sets. Me raving about Phoebe Bridgers' haunting set, him geeking out over the Nationals' brooding anthems. "You ever feel like music's just code for all the shit we can't say?" he asked, his voice dropping low, the tense nylon walls amplifying every syllable. I nodded, too buzzed to lie, and that's when it started, the slow unraveling of guards. He talked about growing up in a small town where being different meant whispers behind bleachers, about the ex who called him too sensitive before ghosting him for a safer bet. I shared my own ghosts. The ex-fiancé who'd bailed when my depression hit, the family back in Philly who still sent passive-aggressive Christmas cards about finding Jesus and a nice girl. By midnight, the rain had softened to a patter, and we were shoulder to shoulder, sharing earbuds plugged into my phone. Courtney Barnett's gravelly drawl filled the space between us. "I want to be the one you call when you're drunk and alone." David's hand found mine in the dark, tentative at first, then firm, his thumb tracing circles on my knuckles like he was mapping a new city. "This okay?" he murmured. And God, it was more than okay, it was electric. The kind of spark that makes you question every no you've ever said to yourself. I turned, our faces inches apart, breaths mingling with the scent of wet earth and possibility. His kiss was hesitant, then hungry, lips tasting of whiskey and salt, hands roaming with the urgency of someone who'd waited too long for permission. We didn't sleep that night. The tent became our world, narrow, humid, alive with whispers and gasps, the festival's distant cheers a soundtrack to our private rebellion. His body was warm against the chill, all lean muscle and soft edges, and in the tangle of sleeping bags, I felt seen, not just desired. "Your trouble, Samuel," he laughed afterward, tracing lazy patterns on my back. But his eyes held something deeper, vulnerability, like he'd handed me a piece of his soul and was terrified I'd drop it. I didn't. Not then. Morning broke gray and glorious, the sun slicing through clouds like a promise. We emerged blinking into the muck, high on endorphins and bad decisions, vowing to stick together for the day's sets. Lollapalooza was in full swing again. Food trucks slinging gourmet tacos, art installations glowing under the haze, and that electric hum of thousands chasing catharsis. David slung an arm around my shoulders as we navigated the crowds, his laugh cutting through the din like a lifeline. "Festival buddy for life?" he teased, and I played it cool, but inside, my heart was a drum solo, pounding out rhythms I'd forgotten I knew. We caught Big Thief in the afternoon, squeezed into the sea of bodies, his hand in my back pocket the whole time. He sang along off-key to Not, his voice raw and unfiltered, and when the chorus hit, "I am not anybody's body," he squeezed my fingers so tight it hurt, in the best way. Later, over lukewarm IPAs at a pop-up bar, he opened up more, the closet he'd half-stepped out of in college, only to slam it shut for his conservative family, the string of hookups that left him hollow, the teaching job that paid the bills but drained his spirit. "I keep waiting for the sign, you know? The one that says it's safe to want this, for real." His gaze lingered on me, heavy with unspoken questions, and I wanted to be that sign, that compass needle spinning toward him. But shadows crept in by evening. As we queued for Tame Impala's sunset slot, his phone buzzed incessantly, texts he silenced with a grimace. "Ex-drama," he muttered, but his shoulders tensed, a wall slamming up where there'd been openness. I let it slide, lost in the psychedelic swirl of the less I know the better, our bodies swaying in sync, sweat slicked and euphoric. That night, back in the tent, it was slower, more deliberate, kisses like confessions, hands exploring with the reverence of artists sketching masterpieces. "Stay after the fest?" I whispered into his neck, bold in the afterglow. He paused. Then, "Yeah. Let's see where this goes." His words wrapped around me like a blanket, warm against the encroaching chill. Day 4 dawned with a vengeance, hangovers and heat, the kind that turns the air thick as molasses. We nursed coffees from a vendor shaped like a retro airstream, plotting our escape from the masses. David was quieter, scrolling his phone with feigned interest, but every stolen glance reignited the fire. We wandered the indie stage, catching a folk duo whose harmonies about lost loves felt too on the nose. Midway through, he pulled me behind a merch tent, kissing me fierce and fast, like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth. "You're making it hard to leave," he said, forehead to mine, and I laughed, pretending my chest didn't ache at the implication. That's when the first crack appeared. As we emerged, laughing and disheveled, a voice sliced through. "David? Holy shit. Is that you?" A guy mid-20s, all sharp jaw and designer shades, pushed through the crowd, enveloping David in a bro hug that lingered too long. "Ethan," David said, stiffening, extricating himself with a forced grin. "What are the odds?" Ethan was from Ann Arbor too. An old college buddy, he explained, but the way Ethan's eyes flicked to me, assessing, amused, set my teeth on edge. They chatted surface level, jobs, mutual friends, the Fest's killer lineup. But Ethan's hand kept landing on David's arm, proprietary, and David's laughs rang hollow. We ditched him eventually, but the mood had soured. Ex's best friend, David admitted later, over falafel wraps on a patch of trampled grass. They run in the same circle. Messy. I pressed gently, too gently, maybe, and he deflected with a kiss, but the seed of doubt took root. That night, the headliner was Arctic Monkeys, all swagger and smoke, and we lost ourselves in the mosh, bodies colliding in the dark. Back in the tent, passion flared hot and desperate, but his whispers carried an edge. "Don't let me fuck this up." I held him tighter, willing my certainty to seep into him, but sleep came fitful, haunted by the ghost of Ethan's smirk. By the final morning, the festival was winding down, tents folding like origami, trash swirling in eddies of wind. We packed in companionable silence, stealing touches amid the chaos. A brush of fingers over zippers, a quick peck behind the porta-potties. "Drive back with me?" David asked, casual as loading coolers into his beat-up Subaru. My heart leaped, Ann Arbor was a detour, sure, but one I craved. "Hell yes," I said, and just like that, the weekend stretched into something real, tangible, a bridge from fantasy to maybe forever. The drive was golden, windows down, playlist shuffling from Hosier to Lord, Lake Michigan's shore blurring past like a watercolor dream. David opened up again, the road a confessional booth on wheels. He talked about wanting to write, poems tucked in desk drawers, stories of boys who loved too quietly. "You inspire that shit, Samuel." Like, for real. His hand on my thigh felt like home, and I spun tales of my own. City walks at dawn, sketches of strangers' faces, the ache of loving without anchors. By nightfall, we rolled into Ann Arbor, his apartment a cozy third-floor walk-up overlooking the Huron River, bookshelves sagging with paperbacks, a guitar gathering dust in the corner. That first night was domestic bliss. Takeout Ty on the couch, his head in my lap as we binge-watched It's a Sin, laughing through tears at the raw ache of it all. "This is what I needed," he murmured, fingers interlacing with mine. "Someone who gets it." We made love slow and sweet, the city lights painting stripes across our skin, and I fell asleep to the rhythm of his breath, believing we'd cracked the code to something lasting. But reality has teeth. Monday morning, he dropped me at the bus station with a kiss that tasted like goodbye. "Text me when you're home," he said, eyes shadowed. I did every day. First. Flirty memes, late-night voice notes, plans for a Brooklyn visit. He responded in bursts, warm, then distant, excuses piling like autumn leaves. Grading papers, family stuff, rough week. I chalked it up to post-fest blues, the crash after the high. But 2 weeks in, the texts dried up, my calls going to voicemail. Panic set in like fog off the river. I scrolled our photos obsessively. Him grinning at the falafel stand, Us tangled in the tent. That compass tattoo I traced with my tongue. What had I missed? The ex? Ethan? Then, on a Thursday night, scrolling Instagram in a haze of Pinot Grigio, I saw it, David's story, a candid shot of him and Ethan at some dive bar, arms slung around each other, caption back to basics with the best. No malice, just that easy camaraderie, but the date stamp? Last weekend, when he'd claimed a solo retreat, my stomach hollowed. Betrayal isn't always a knife. Sometimes it's a paper cut, slow and insidious. I fired off a text, saw the post. What's going on? Crickets. Then, hours later, it's complicated. Sorry. Complicated. The word burned, a euphemism for cowardice. I paced my loft, the city skyline mocking me with its indifference, memories replaying like a glitchy reel. His laugh in the rain, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer. I bought a ticket to Ann Arbor that weekend, fueled by hurt and hubris. The train ride was torture, every mile a mile marker of my unraveling. His building loomed gray under drizzling skies, and I buzzed up unannounced, heart hammering like a bass drop. He answered in sweats, eyes widening in shock. Samuel? What the? We need to talk, I said, pushing past. The apartment unchanged but alien now, same books, same guitar, but his posture defensive, arms crossed like barriers. He sighed, running a hand through his curls. I didn't want it to end like this. End? It wasn't even a beginning. My voice cracked, the dam breaking. You ghosted me after promising everything. Was it Ethan, the ex, or just me? Too much, too soon. He winced, sinking onto the couch. It's not you. God, it's never you. The words I'd longed for, but laced with pity. Then it spilled. The ex wasn't an ex, Mark. A colleague, closeted to his core, who'd yanked David back with tearful pleas after the festival. He showed up that night, after you left. Said he'd change, that we could make it work in secret. David's eyes glistened. I caved. Because I'm scared, Samuel. Scared of the fallout, the family, the job. And Ethan. He's just a friend, but he knows. He pushes me to be brave. But you betrayed us. I cut in, voice steel over the quake. Not just me, yourself. That tent, those nights, that was real. And you threw it away for shadows. He stood, reaching for me, but I flinched. Please. I love. He stopped, the word hanging like smoke. Love. I twisted the knife deeper, because I felt it too, blooming fierce and foolish in my chest. The confrontation stretched, raw and ragged shouts dissolving into sobs, accusations into admissions. He confessed the poems he'd written about me, hidden in his phone. I admitted my terror of abandonment, rooted in years of half-loves. Outside, thunder rumbled, echoing that first storm, as if the universe was looping us back to rewrite the ending. In the end, I walked out into the rain, his pleas chasing me down the stairs. Come back, we can fix this. But I didn't. Not then. The bus back to the city was a blur of tears and revelations, the landscape smearing into impressionist strokes. Betrayal had carved me hollow, but in the ache, something stirred clarity, maybe, or the faint outline of grace. Weeks blurred into months. I threw myself into work, sketching festival scenes that bled with subtext, tents as cocoons, lovers as lightning. Friends dragged me to bars, to pride events, whispering, "You're better off." But David's ghost lingered, in a song on the radio, a flash of curls in a crowd. I unfollowed, blocked, but the heart doesn't scroll away so easy. Then, spring thaw, a package on my doorstep, no return address. Inside, a battered notebook, his handwriting, looping and familiar. Poems, dated from our weekend onward. Storm-kissed about that first night. Compass lies about his wavering north. Haze at dawn. A love letter in verse that ended. I ran because I feared the light you offered. Tucked in the pages, a ticket stub from Lollapalooza, creased and cherished, and a note, "I'm north now, if you'll have me." My hands shook as I read, the city waking around me in honks and pigeons. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a slow burn, embers fanned by time. I didn't call, not yet. Instead, I packed a bag, booked a train, let the road decide. An arbor bloomed riotous, cherry blossoms like confetti. His door opened to that same crooked smile, thinner now, eyes hopeful and haunted. Samuel, no more words needed. I stepped in, pulling him close, the compass aligning at last. We talked for hours, therapy sessions and truths, boundaries drawn like maps. He was out now, to his sister first, then colleagues, the weight lifting like fog. Mark was a memory, Ethan a cheerleader from afar. Summer found us road-tripping festivals, Bonnaroo's bonfires, Pitchfork's indie haze, tents shared without storms, only stars. Love, turned out, wasn't the high of the drop. It was the encore, the quiet harmony after the roar. We built it brick by brick. His poems in my sketches, my chaos in his calm. Betrayal had scarred us, but scars tell stories of survival, of choosing light over shadow. In the end, it's not the hooks that define us, but the unravels and reweaves. David and I, two Midwestern transplants in a Brooklyn brownstone, wake to coffee and kisses, the festival forever etched in our bones. A reminder that sometimes, sharing a tent changes everything, if you let it. The zipper of the tent ripped open like a scream in the dead of night, and there he was, David, shirtless and wild-eyed, rain-slicked hair plastered to his forehead, clutching a bottle of cheap whiskey like it was his last lifeline. "Samuel, I can't pretend anymore," he gasped, his voice cracking over the thunder rumbling across the desert sky, the festival's distant bass thumping like a frantic heartbeat. In that split second, as lightning forked the horizon and illuminated the chaos of mud-soaked tents and abandoned lawn chairs, I knew my carefully guarded world was about to shatter. It was the third night of Lollapalooza Midwest, that sprawling beast of a festival in Chicago's Grant Park, where the air always smelled like weed, fried dough, and unbridled possibility. I come alone,